Hey everyone, today we're in Mesa, Arizona at the Mesa City Cemetery, and we're here to pay a visit to two different outlaw graves. Now by different, I mean really different. So stay tuned and let's see them both. So if you want to know where we're at, just come to this sign that says 8th and C for the streets that are labeled. Just to kind of give you a little panoramic view. This first one that we're going to visit is about 3 rows in. So here's the first, the second, and then the third. And so it's right up over there. But if you want a reference, there is the main office right over there. So you're going to go a little ways in. This one's going to stand out right here. And you're going to come to this one right here. Ernesto A. Miranda, 1941 to 1976. You can see there's a lot of pennies here that people have visited. And then at the top it says beloved brother and friend. And then there's a cross and some ivy leaves over on the right. Someone's actually left some flowers. So you know who this guy is, even if you think that you don't. And the reason that you do is because you've watched television shows where they've read Miranda Rights. Hopefully you haven't had those rights given to you in person. But if you have, then you have this man to thank, because that's where those rights were named after. Now he was a kind of a bad man, not even kind of, he was a bad man. So he definitely is an outlaw. And we're going to discuss what he actually did and why those rights came about. Ernesto A. Miranda was born in Mesa, Arizona. His mother died while he was still in school, and that's when his legal troubles with the police started. He was convicted of burglary during his 8th grade year and was incarcerated at the Arizona Reform School. Upon his release, he was convicted again and had another term in the Reform School. He then moved to Los Angeles, and it resulted in arrests for armed robbery and minor sex offenses. After his incarceration, he was back in Arizona. Miranda then did a tour in the Army, which resulted in stockade time with hard labor for going AWOL and having various sex charges. For this, he received a dishonorable discharge. He was then arrested in Nashville driving a stolen car across state lines, and he was sentenced to a federal prison system. When he got back to Phoenix, Miranda was arrested for armed robbery of a bank employee and the kidnap rape of an 18-year-old woman. Intensive interrogation by the police of the Phoenix area resulted in a signed confession with a paragraph typed at the top which stated the confession was made with full knowledge of my legal rights, understanding the statement I make may be used against me. Then he was convicted solely on the strength of his confession. On appeal, the Supreme Court set down the rule requiring that the defendant be advised of his right to remain silent and to have an attorney. Under the new rule, a confession obtained without this warning could not be used at a trial. Released, he was rearrested. He was read his Miranda rights this time and convicted on the strength of an actual witness without the confession and sentenced to 20 to 30 years on each of the 2 counts to be served concurrently. He served 11 years before being paroled. Afterwards, he continued earning money by selling autographed Miranda warning cards. He continued his criminal lifestyle with numerous arrests for driving offenses, which resulted in the suspension of his driving privileges. He was then found in possession of a gun, and he returned to prison for another year. Upon his release, he spent time in bars and living in cheap motels. While playing cards at a bar in Phoenix, a violent confrontation occurred. He was mortally wounded with a knife and was pronounced dead on arrival at the age of 35 at the Good Samaritan Hospital. The suspect was arrested and read his Miranda rights. Upon his release, he left for Mexico and the case was closed. Ernesto does have one other family member that is located near him, and it is this one right here, a veteran. This is Jorge David Miranda, sergeant in the U.S. Army, and I assume that this is probably a younger brother, maybe 9 years younger. October 23rd, 1950 to November 6th, 2004, and it also says beloved brother. So they are located just right here. One more view of where we're at. There's the office. And there's the trees right around 8th and C. Looks like they're doing a little bit of construction and putting in a nice fenced area over there. So the first grave that we visited was on 8th and C. We are now on 9th Street, actually in between 8th and 9th, and then in between B and A. And there's the office right there. And so if you look here, there's 1 row, 2 row, 3 row, and 4 row right by this tree and that trash can. And you're going to see the grave that we're talking about. It's another outlaw, but this is an outlaw of a different sort. An outlaw of country music, and this is a big one. I mean, a huge one. He completely changed the way music was done and did it his own way outside of Nashville. He was fed up with a lot of things there. You can see an excellent picture of him there. Waylon Jennings right there. June 15th, 1937 to February 13th, 2002. And I remember this. I had a daughter that was born, my oldest one, just right before on February 4th, 2002. So I remember when he died of complications from his diabetes. But it says, I am my beloved's, my beloved is mine, a loving son, husband, father, and grandfather. You can see the infamous Waylon Jennings symbol, a vagabond dreamer, a rhymer, a singer of songs, a revolutionary in country music, and beloved by the world. Then you can see some pennies that are fashioned into a heart, an unlit cigarette, some Jack Daniels bottles, some more pennies, and it looks like a cat's eye marble there, and then a shell. And of course, a lot of people have been stopping by here and smoking cigarettes and then leaving them. And then you can see some live roses that are now dead, but people have visited with live flowers and silk flowers, American flag, and then there's a happy birthday little marker there, and we even have some cotton right there. But you can see where the grass is worn down from people coming to pay their respect to him. Definitely a legend in country music. Waylon Jennings was an American singer, songwriter, and musician. He is best known for outlaw country music, which he helped pioneer. He was born in Littlefield, Texas on June 15, 1937 to Lorene and William Jennings. When Jennings was 8, his mother taught him how to play guitar. By the age of 14, he was performing on a weekly radio show where he played a mixture of country and western and bluegrass music. At age 16, he was getting into trouble at Littlefield High School, which forced him to drop out. He was still performing at a country radio station and also driving a cement truck at this time. This is when he met Buddy Holly at a Lubbock restaurant. The two often met at local shows. Jennings had a stint as a radio DJ but was fired for playing 2 of Little Richard's records in a row. He then got on with another radio station where he honed his skills doing commercials, DJing, and live performances. Buddy Holly then took him under his wing and worked to improve his image. Eventually, this led to Holly hiring him as part of his winter dance party tour as a bassist, in which he had a heavy tour during the winter months of 1959. This created logistical problems touring during the bitter cold and snow. During the tour, the men had been traveling by bus and the heater was not working properly. The drummer that they had gotten frostbite and had to get off of the tour so he could get treated medically. It became so miserable that Holly decided to rent a plane so that he, Waylon Jennings, and Tommy Alsop could get to the next location quicker. Tommy Alsop did a coin toss with Ritchie Valens to decide who would get on the plane. Tommy lost this coin toss, so Ritchie got on. The Big Bopper was suffering from the flu and complaining about how the bus was not meant for a man his size. So Jennings gave up his seat for him to go. When Holly learned that Jennings had given up his seat, the two had some friendly banter. "I hope your old bus freezes up," Holly said. "Well, I hope your old plane crashes," Jennings said jokingly. Less than an hour and a half later, shortly after 1 a.m. on February 3, 1959, Holly's charter plane crashed outside of Mason City, Iowa, killing Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, and the pilot. The guilt of not being on the plane, as well as his last comments to Holly, haunted Jennings for the rest of his life. Waylon pressed on and had moderate success with some recordings. In August of 1965, Jennings had made his first appearance on Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart with That's the Chance I'll Have to Take. In 1966, he had some more success in Nashville and on the country charts. While there, he rented an apartment with Johnny Cash, but felt like he was being trapped in the circuit and rising debt. In 1972, Jennings released Ladies Love Outlaws, which was his first approach towards the outlaw country. Jennings was accustomed to performing with his own band, but the powerful Nashville producers discouraged that and wanted him to use local studio musicians. They also did not want him to play his own guitar or select his own material to record. At this time, Jennings felt restricted in Nashville. 1973 was a turning point in Jennings' career. He took more control of what he was doing, and he really started producing some hit singles over the next several years. 1975 saw the #1 single, Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way? In 1976, RCA released the compilation album Wanted, The Outlaws, which featured Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Jennings' wife, Jessie Coulter. The album was the first country music album certified platinum. 1977 gave way for a duet with Nelson called Luckenbach, Texas. In 1978, they followed up the hit single with Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. Jennings continued his success throughout the decade and joined the cast of the CBS series The Dukes of Hazzard. He not only wrote and sang the theme song, but he also narrated the show. The theme song was The Good Old Boys, and it became the biggest hit of his career. Not only was it a #1 hit on the Billboard Country Singles chart, but it was also a crossover hit, peaking at 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. In the 1980s, he continued his success teaming up with Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson to form the Highwaymen. He also continued the release of singles as well. In the 1990s, his record sales and radio play declined, but he continued to draw large crowds in live performances. In the late 1990s, his health began to decline, and he started to slow down on performing, which included touring. His decades of excessive smoking and drug use were starting to take a toll on his health. He was also a little overweight and had a poor diet, which developed into type 2 diabetes. He had beaten his cocaine habit and ended his 6-pack-a-day smoking habit by 1988, but the same year he also underwent a heart bypass surgery. By the year 2000, his diabetes had worsened, and it reduced his mobility and forced him to end most of his touring. In December of 2001, his entire left foot had to be amputated because of poor circulation problems. On February 13, 2002, Waylon Jennings died in his sleep at the age of 64 from diabetic complications at his home in Chandler, Arizona. Jennings was married 4 times and he had 6 children. Jennings' longest marriage was to country music singer Jessie Coulter, who he married on October 26, 1969. Together they had 1 son named Waylon Albright, which you may know as Shooter Jennings. Between 1965 and 1991, 96 Jennings singles appeared on the Billboard's Hot Country Singles chart and 16 topped it. Littlefield, Texas renamed one of its major roads to Waylon Jennings Boulevard. Over the years, he has received numerous awards and influenced many musicians and groups that have gone on to successful careers in the country music industry. He will forever be remembered as the outlaw country music artist who stirred up Nashville and did things his own way. He certainly had a signature look and sound that spanned over several decades. So that's going to do it for today's episode. 2 completely different outlaws, but I hope you learned something, and I hope you found it was interesting. Thanks for always watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time.